Hey everyone, this is Bek Abdullayev tuning in from Super Dispatch with Auto Transport Copilot podcast. Copilot podcast exists to bring different people, professionals from the auto transport industry to a conversation about the industry, about auto transport, about carriers, drivers, brokers, and shippers, and everyone else in the auto transport ecosystem. Today, we have a really exciting guest. I have Kolby Robinson with me. Colby is the director of logistics at AutoSavvy, a very successful and a fast-growing dealership group out of Utah. They have a very unique business model. And Colby came into this industry in 2021 from a 3PL company. And this was his first auto transport job. And he had to figure things out, to turn things around, build an entire transport department, restructure things to make sure that they were able to do logistics, so transporting cars in full control in-house. So today with Colby, we're going to talk about his background. We'll get to know a little bit. And then after that, we'll talk about his story of coming in from a 3PL company in freight logistics, going into auto transport and learning how to build efficient, auto transport department inside a dealer group. Hey, Colby, welcome to Copilot.
Hey, Beck, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm really excited to talk to you today because you have lots of knowledge around building a transport department, moving cars, dealing with carriers, dealing with problems associated with transporting cars, planning, forecasting. I also want to talk to you about the role of brokers in the world where how companies decide what the right path is for them, whether they use in-house transport teams or they build in-house transport teams, or whether they outsource and work with a broker. But to get you started, let's get to know you a little bit. You and I got caught up a little bit, so I know a little bit about your background, but I want our listeners to get to know Colby a little bit. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you ended up in auto transport, and what you're doing today.
Sure. Yeah, I think so I'm a Utah local basically, but was born in Missoula, Montana. Let's see, I went to college for something completely non-related to logistics. I did geology at Weber State. Did that because I've been looking at rocks ever since I was little. My mom was a geology major, so I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but went to the school for something that I just wanted to go to. And then after that, I've had a lot of challenges in figuring out what I wanted to do, but I think I just kind of want to follow after my parents, which is weird, but my dad's in logistics. He's been in logistics for, his entire life. So I got a sense of that and asked him what that was about. And so after college, I joined a 3PL. That was England Logistics. They're a pretty massive company. They have their own trucking fleet. And my dad actually worked for them back in the day. So I got my feet wet there, did the whole brokerage side of things. That's its own struggle. It's almost like a sales job. I've had sales experience. I've worked in dealerships before, with Subaru dealership in Ogden. So, the two are closely related as far as brokerage goes. And I shortly realized, didn't want to do the brokerage side of things. I wanted to see where I could find the next challenge, more so on team management, maybe operations, stuff like that. So I was looking around and, found AutoSavvy, what used to be AutoSource. They're the largest rebranded and rebuilt dealership company in the United States. So, they have about 25, 26 dealerships. They're the only ones who are doing what they do in this niche of the world. So they were looking for someone to kind of transform and rebuild their logistics department. Luckily, I got the call and was brought on. And had a lot of success since then, and I think that's also what we're here to talk about. But yeah, there you have it.
So when we were catching up before I hit record, you mentioned that you had worked at a dealership at a younger age. and vowed to never return back to a dealership. So here you are, back to the dealership.
Yeah. Some people thrive in dealerships, but you gotta love selling, and it's a lot of hours. I've got 2 kids, and I was young at the time, and I was also in college. So, working 70, 80-hour work weeks and trying to hustle. I had success and did really great, but after a while it starts to burn on you. So yeah, I have my experience on the dealership side of things, kind of know the ins and outs of that, but I really didn't want to return to the whole sales experience with cars ever again. But I don't know, it's just kismet or fate. Now I'm back in a dealership.
This is a little different, I guess.
It is, yeah.
This is a different kind of a sales job. Also, I forgot to mention, congratulations on your recent award. You won 40 under 40 by Auto Remarketing. Yeah. I was at Used Car Week as well. I saw the pictures of you accepting the award. Congratulations. As I was telling you, I was surprised that you were over 30 years old.
Dude, I've got great hairs, I promise. They're
looking
somewhere.
good. So yeah, congrats on the award. I can call you an award-winning industry professional.
Yeah, it was a good, great honor. Yeah, Used Car Week was an awesome experience, and then being nominated for that award was pretty humbling. And I've had a lot of support, not only from your team, but everyone's reached out after then, and I've had a lot of support from AutoSavvy. Without them, I couldn't have even gotten close to getting that achievement. So pretty grateful.
It's awesome. I'm very happy for you. So let's get into it. Let's try to understand. Let's try to explain to everyone what AutoSavvy is, like what they do, and then how everything that you do fits into that. And then we'll just take it apart around what you did, how you did it, do's and don'ts, and pros and cons of how you guys are approaching transport. But let's start off with, I know we all have these like fancy ways of explaining what our companies do, but sometimes I like to use the way I talk to my kids. So if you had to explain to your kids or somebody else's kids what AutoSavvy is, what do you guys basically do?
Yeah, so I'll break it down in a pretty simple way. Basically, what AutoSavvy thrives on is they'll take cars that are damaged, particularly ones that need to be rebuilt and then rebranded, and then restructured on the title end of things so that they can be sold again. So, we've got builders all across the nation. These builders are the ones who find the units, and they will rebuild them and then essentially sell them to us. And then from there, we will remarket them to the public and consumers who want to save a buck versus going through a normal dealership or buying brand new or used. And, we'll then put these vehicles through a pretty rigorous inspection process, being recertified, and then, cleaned up real nice. And, they've grown a lot of dealerships this way. They started out small locally in Utah. And, ever since then, they've just been growing extremely fast ever since then. So, they use an in-house logistics department such as me to get those cars from all over the nation and to all of our dealerships.
Yeah, good job. So that makes a lot of sense. I have a personal experience doing that. A few years ago, when we kept having kids, we have 4 now, and I think we'll stop at 4. But there was we were shopping for a bigger car, and SUVs were so expensive. Brand new vans were expensive. So we ended up buying a slightly beat up a minivan from Copart and fixing it up. It just had like rear bumper damage, you know, so we just had to fix it up in the back. Structurally, it was still intact and in good shape. And I think instead of spending like what I would have spent, maybe like almost 40 grand on a van, I think I spent maybe 15,000 total.
Yeah.
In cash, great. Just buying it, getting it fixed up. Yeah, it was a great deal. And it still runs to this day. Actually, I just installed a roof rack to
There you
as
go.
that extra storage for camping and outdoor activities.
Yeah, there you go.
I think it's interesting that you guys created an entire company successfully out of that model. I love that model.
Essentially, that's what we do. And, there's a lot of stuff in the background that goes to making a car being trustworthy enough to buy. Like I said, the inspection process, they do have to be rebuilt to a certain standard. There's laws to follow. There's, DMV rules, titling rules, state rules, inspection. I mean, it's a pretty complicated process before it can even land at the dealership and posted for sale. So, they've had a lot of success this way, and there's a lot of customers out there who trust us and have had a lot of happy outcomes.
Yeah, I'm glad all the checks and balances are there. You want to make sure those cars you're selling are safe.
Yeah, so obviously.
Let's get into you creating this new way of moving cars inside AutoSavvy. So AutoSavvy is growing. They have some level of transport. Here you are. You come from the freight world. Walk us through what it was like when you came in. What did they tell you the job is, and how did you navigate this new world of auto transport?
Yeah. So, my boss, Matt, he's the VP of purchasing. When I was in early conversations with him about the job, not gonna lie, I had hair standing on my skin. I felt like maybe I was a little over my head, especially when I first got here. But everything's scary at first, and I think with a little grit and determination, you can dig right in. I think it all started off with me just doing research and kind of shadowing over what the department was currently doing, taking notes, asking a lot of questions, and just figuring out the main pain points of what was happening in the department. And I think it's really easy to get bogged down by the minute details, which I would suggest staying away from. I would focus on big picture stuff. What is a department missing, and what does it currently have? Does it have a TMS? Does it have an AWS? Does it have a CRM? Things like that. You got to look for tools that are working, and then tools to replace the ones that aren't. Yeah. As far as restructuring goes, it's going to be different for every company. Obviously, we do things a little bit differently. We don't have customers and a sales budget to meet in the logistics department per se. We do have a budget to meet every year as far as what we're spending on transport, but so I think I navigated it that way. And we had a team size of, when I got in here, I think it was 6 or 7 people. And over the years, I've been here for almost 4. I've streamlined it down to 3. So, for those customers out there who are trying to figure out their logistics department and think, oh man, I need to have an office full of logistics people just to run it. You really don't. It just matters how streamlined you can make things. And obviously that's going to take the right tools and the right people for sure. And you may have to use a broker, who knows, especially out of the gate, someone to lean on, like a Certus, great company, Run Buggy, someone like that. But internally, we have been able to achieve great success without a brokerage, but also depends on your company.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to touch on that. I do want to touch on topic of when it makes sense to do transport in-house and when it makes sense to partner with a reliable broker. But just to capture congrats on the progress you've made in the last few years. And you've only been there since 2021?
Yeah.
3-4 years. So not a long time. But so what was happening in the transport department that it took 7 or 8 people to do that it now takes a fraction of that? Like, help me understand at a high level, like what was happening before, how were you guys moving cars before, and how are you doing it differently today?
Sure. So all those tools I did mention, we almost, the department almost didn't have, or they were lacking updated systems. I think communication was one of the biggest things. Everything wasn't getting tracked internally on one system or software, if you will. There wasn't in my eyes, a real TMS system. So, I'm gonna toot your own horn over there, but Super Dispatch is part of the reason that I was able to save this department. It houses everything that I needed for my team, and it's something that they were lacking. They were relying on, and no offense to Central Dispatch, but they were relying on Central Dispatch. And it's a little bit, it just doesn't fit the needs of what we needed, especially for an in-house logistics department. They were, as far as carrier data, when you ask for insurance, a W-9, their payment info, they were almost doing it every single time that they moved it, even with the same carrier, because people were saving W-9s on each other's computers. There wasn't like a centralized spot. And if there was, it was just messy, and a lot of it comes down to leadership. It's why I was brought in. The leadership that was prior to me, wasn't there and not doing the job right. There were some team members that I had to shift in and out. Really, you got to focus at what worked for me. You got to focus on the main pain points first. Everything that you start noticing as a red flag, do your research too. I even reached out to my old dealership that I worked with and said, "Hey, what works for you? Can I talk to your logistics guy? What works for you?" I think that's another big thing, is don't be afraid to talk to other companies and see what they're doing that works, that is closely related to yours. So for me, it's a dealership. It might not be for other freight guys out there. I know that auto transport isn't the only thing in the world. There's LTL, there's dry shipments, intermodal, the works. So, but if you're a logistics guy and you're looking to transform your department, don't be afraid to do the research. Take your time with it. See what tools are out there. Do you have a supply chain management tool? Do you have an AWS like CDK? Do you need a thing like Salesforce, which is a CRM? Start taking notes and really dig in, and then tackle the biggest obstacles first. Like I said earlier, you can really, I'm a perfectionist, and I would constantly get bogged down by small stuff that I want to fix, but I'd quickly have to reshift. So I think if, you stick to stuff like that, it should be pretty easy to restructure over time.
I love the learning mindset. I love the approach of asking around how other people do stuff. When we started working in auto transport, there was not a lot of information available. We also had to do a lot of asking around or riding around with trucks or sitting in the office watching brokers take calls, dispatchers do their jobs, accounting, try to track down payments, everything on paper, like large numbers of mail envelopes coming in and out. But today, one of the things I love about this forum, for example, there's lots of resources now. Facebook groups are very active, and I love seeing how carriers and brokers are actively exchanging information and data on what's happening. You have a lot of podcasts, like Auto Transport Intel, for example, by Jay Wurzberger. He's been putting on the show for a few years, and they have a lot of guests, and there's lots of information out there. A few years ago, even before the pandemic, that wasn't the case. I went to this conference one time. It was an Auto Haulers Association conference. Yeah. And they had this panel from established, successful carrier fleets to share their secrets of how they made it, basically. And there were 4 panelists and a very dynamic host, but people were not willing at all to say anything. I'll give you an example. So the host would be like, "Oh, how did you get to 20 trucks? And what are some secrets? And what are some tips you have?" And the standard answer from everyone was like, "Well, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It just takes a lot of hard work. We just work really hard." There wasn't any specific things of this is how you land business. This is how you go after business. This is how you grow your fleet. This is how you recruit drivers, specific things. And today you have Auto Transport Intel. Recently, there was another podcast launched by a ClearPath team down in Florida called Crossroads. They've done a great job. So Aaron over there is bringing on some OG experts in the auto transport space and beginning this, turning this knowledge into public knowledge, which is great for this industry because for a long time that this stuff didn't exist. Like guys like you had to come in and just call and ask around, do you know anything about this?
Yeah,
you can't really Google and answer to a question like that.
It's a niche industry. And I learned that right off the bat. Especially for you guys, I think it's just, it's a niche industry as far as availability of information goes.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into a little bit about your relationships with the industry. So your team deals with carriers, right? We have a lot of carrier listeners on the show. So let's talk about as a shipper, as someone who does business with carriers and gives carriers a lot of business and has some service level expectations for that. Talk to me about how you view building and maintaining your carrier network and your relationships and what your expectations are in working with carriers.
Sure. Personally, I like working with carriers directly. You have more control that way. I don't think I mentioned it before, but we don't use a brokerage system. That also takes out the aspect of being able to deal with them directly. We have a lot of unique situations where we need to have that relationship directly with our carriers. Where take for instance, a car isn't ready because the electronic mirror isn't working or something like that. A carrier will then quickly relay that to us, and we can handle it in real time versus using a middleman such as a brokerage, and then them trying to deal with it, but then it not really working because maybe they can't get a hold of the builder. We have unique ways of communicating with our builders. We depend on our purchasing team, who are the ones who, have that direct outreach. So they might have an answer in the moment as to why a car's not ready. Maybe it's somewhere else. So we need to be able to shift things quickly with our carriers. And I know it can seem overwhelming because, we have a vast carrier network, thanks to Super Dispatch, but, and then we have our legacy carrier network. I call them legacy, the ones that we depend on the most and do the most shipping with. But, once you start to form those relationships with those carriers, I think it makes a huge difference on everybody's experience that is dipped into this world. Almost every department at AutoSavvy is affected by what we do. So I think everyone's come to appreciate the relationship we have with our carriers and how easy we can navigate issues. It also helps with cycle time. If you can have that partnership with your carriers and be able to, move things quickly.
So if I'm a carrier and I want to do more business with AutoSavvy, how can I earn your trust and earn more of your business as a carrier?
Proof's in the pudding, man. I would just say, we've had carriers reach out to us and been like, look, you're one of the highest rated customers out there as far that does auto transport. There's not a lot of huge companies that do. They'll reach out to us and say, what does it take? And I'd just say it takes a few chances and we'll see what you've got. And from there, I'll give them the opportunity. Obviously, we do things a little bit differently. With our legacy carriers, we kind of have a rate negotiation system, what works for them and what works for us as far as mileage, fuel rates, all that jazz. That's another thing that's been unique that I've come up with is our own little contract with carriers. So if that works for them, we have a great relationship with our legacy carriers. But yeah, I mean, you just gotta prove it. Communicate for carriers who are out there looking to find more business and be more dependable. A lot of it is going to come down to communication. How quickly can we get a hold of you? How quickly do you get a hold of us if there is an issue on your end? Stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that. I know that does stand out. So speaking about challenges in the industry that you face, So some of the more common problems that you and your team face day in and day out?
I would say, well, in the early years, I would get pushed in a certain direction by senior staff to push the envelope a little bit more. And sometimes, that would be testing out new companies outside of the ones that we're currently using. And that can always be a huge challenge, right? Because throwing something new into the mix isn't ideal. And there's definitely a huge learning curve. And sometimes it might not always work, but I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And I think the advice I can give on that is learn how to be flexible and adaptable. And it may not suit to what you think at first, but it is pretty important to hear out your peers and your executive staff. They're there for a reason, and they've gotten there for a reason. And sometimes it works out. Like luckily, I've been able to adapt, and my department's been able to adapt to a few new things that we've had to introduce, and it's worked out great since then. So I think the biggest challenge is finding out what works and what doesn't. Another thing is battling the carrier economy. How many carriers are available in certain areas? It's a huge thing that most people don't really think about. Everything moves on a truck. It's not just cars. I mean, every single little thing. And that all has to do with the amount of carriers that are out there in order to do so. So that can be a little frustrating, especially as times change. Something that politically affects the carrier economy, whether it's fuel prices or some carriers will go on strike for whatever reason, not getting paid enough. So I wish that were more visible to the government, or at least they were more aware. I don't know how it's not a bigger pain point for everyone, because everything is shipped on a truck. So yeah, those are huge challenges.
Yeah, a lot of people refer to trucking as the backbone of the economy.
It really is,
and especially during the pandemic. I think that the industry became very clutch to sustain our way of life.
Yeah.
Have you seen any sort of new trends emerging in the industry?
Yeah,
that you can share with us?
I think when I first started, there's two things. One of them's AI. That's just changing everything that we can think of. So that will definitely, I think that's another thing that you might want to look into. Any logistics department is some kind of AI tool to help with your inventory process. And inventory for us is extremely tricky. If you were to compare us to someone like just a normal Chevy dealership, brand new, they don't have the hurdles that we have to hop through, because not only do we need to figure out where mix, make, and model goes, but it also depends on titling. If that certain title can be sold in that state, the DMV inspections officers, just a whole slew of things, especially after it's been rebuilt and stuff like that. So AI is definitely, we've already introduced that, and we're in the phase of teaching it and all that other stuff. So hopefully by next year or early 2026, we'll be introducing it effectively, and it will be a part of our inventory process, and hopefully make it a lot easier. And sales growth, that'll be affected by sales growth. So that's one major thing. Hopefully
I'm seeing a lot of AI tools pop up as well. I haven't seen a ton in auto transport yet, just a little bit. A lot more in freight and trucking. I've been looking recently at some new dispatching tools, some AI dispatching tools.
Yeah.
I've been demoing some tools that make calls on your behalf.
Yeah.
The AI is making check-in calls. So you talked about communication with drivers. So there's some carrier tools available that will automatically call you and provide updates, or answer the phone and ask you what you're calling in regards. And if you say, I want to know where this car is, the AI will give you a status update on that.
Yeah.
So I think the toolkit I think you're right. The number of tools available at our disposal to do our jobs and makes things easier is exponentially increasing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think another thing to think about is, when I was at that conference at Used Car Week, there were some speakers up on stage, and one of them mentioned being flexible to the customer's needs. And, as you think about it, selling a car is now becoming almost like, shipping it via Amazon. We've had more sold units that I've needed to ship directly to carriers' homes, more so than when I first started 3.5 years ago. It's actually picked up quite a bit. So being able to adapt that whole scenario, because that is its own challenge, where you're going to have to figure out how to transport it to a customer directly, and do so without losing too much on the shipping cost.
Hey, you mentioned as you were telling us your story, adaptability. Actually, before I get into that, I wanted to ask you about the your leadership philosophy and some of your core values that you mentioned. Isn't adaptability one of them?
Yeah, for sure.
I don't have my notes. I thought it was one of them. But let me ask that next. But before that, I forgot to touch on. Let's touch on, based on what you know, when it makes sense to let's talk about doing transport in-house versus outsourcing the transport function.
Yeah.
So tell us, just from your perspective, there's different companies, different use cases. When does it make sense to do transport yourself, and what does that take? Right? It's not easy.
Sure.
And then when does it make sense to outsource transport and partner with a reputable broker?
Yeah. I would say, it's everyone's different. When I was on the broker's side of things, you always wanted every customer to have your, be holding hands with you. And you always thought that brokerage was the answer. But again, it's just going to depend on your scenario, what kind of a company you are, what kind of needs you have. We're a little bit different in that, like I said, we're the shipper, the receiver, the customer. We're the vendor. So, relying on a brokerage system just wasn't in our best interest. And I think a lot of that can surround, we've tested out, people. And as you know, Bek, we've tested out using, there was Central Dispatch, then there was Run Buggy, then there was a Certus, and then, there were some companies in between. And some of these I didn't have an option. I just had to test them. But time and time again, I was able to prove that my in-house logistics department was able to save more if we did it just ourselves. I was able to reduce cycle times through certain processes. I was able to reduce how much we paid carriers by coming up with a rate negotiation system and contract with legacy carriers. I would say that brokerages do offer a lot of benefits. Reduced stress, reduced cost, reduced cycle times. Again, it depends on how, and also, do you want to cut out that communication, that direct communication with wherever your source of product is coming from, and also with your carriers? If you're okay with that, and you feel comfortable enough to trust a brokerage system to do everything on that side of things, I would 100% recommend it. But whereas I wanted to show that having an in-house logistics department can save more money, because, I'm a pretty data-driven guy, and I've been forced to be more of a data-driven guy because of the gentlemen who are above me here. We solely focus on KPI data, and it has helped this company grow. We just happen to sell cars. I think a lot of that also ties into the fact of what you're going to end up doing for your own department. And your own KPI data will show, here's where everything is working for you or not working for you. And when we compared it to working with a brokerage, It just didn't make sense in that world. Our cycle times were reduced. I was able to reduce cycle times more so when we were comparing all the data that a brokerage system was doing for us. They said they could cut costs. That's fine, but sometimes cutting costs doesn't equate to saving that quality piece for you. So I think it would behoove someone to not try out both ways. Try, especially if you're trying to restructure quickly and right off the bat, definitely lean on a brokerage system to try and help you do that, and then wean them off if you want to try going the in-house way. And if you have all the tools that you need to have those first before you can do an in-house logistics department. I'm lucky that my company was able to invest into my needs for my department whenever I suggested them. There were tools that exist now that we've had to have software developers build for us, and that costs a lot of money. But with the right support system, you can make that happen. If I didn't have that here, we'd probably be using a brokerage system.
Yeah, that makes sense. I agree with all of your assessments. I think what I've seen work is, sometimes when a company that has the need of transporting cars, I think, as you pointed out, if you don't have an in-house professional, dedicated person to that, it's difficult to do that on its own, right? Like, it's an obvious outsource situation. So you need to invest into a team, into a tech stack. So there's lots of challenges with that. There's also a risk tolerance, I think, risk or reward balance. I think you're highlighting a lot of rewards of doing transport in-house, but all that also comes with some risk taking. You have to pay the carriers. Whereas for the broker, you can float money longer, so you don't have to pay the broker for 30, 60, up to 90 days sometimes, depending on how you negotiate. Right? Liability, the broker takes on liability, something goes wrong, it's their problem, it's not your problem, right?
Yeah.
And I think with your data, at the end of the year, you're able to assess what's best for the company based on that. And maybe because you are such a data-driven organization, you're able to clearly see why it makes sense for your company to do in-house. Tell us a little bit about, for those of us that are doing transport in-house or anybody else, you don't have to tell us the actual KPI numbers, but what KPIs are you tracking the transport department in your company?
Yeah, I probably won't go over specific data, but we're definitely tracking cycle times. So from the time that it hits our system to the time that it finally delivers to a dealership, we track that. How long it takes for it to be, for a unit to be assigned to a load and then created, as far as load building goes. And then from created to delivered, we track all that. We track every single little timing aspect of it. How long does it sit at a builder's location? We track that. Why is it sitting there? And then everything to do with cost. And cost is directly related to time, we track all that. Our KPIs will track make, mix, model across multiple areas. We'll track the trends and forecast those along with diesel fuel prices in certain areas. Whenever something spikes, immediately we'll try to attack that in some other way. So data is a huge thing. We use Power BI and CDK and a few other tools. We actually use a lot of tools that focus highly on data and everything there is to know about it. And it's pretty important to making a company successful, in my opinion, and everyone else's here. If you're not looking at your data, then I don't know what the hell you're doing.
Let me ask you a question related to data. As you're moving cars, or as you're planning your budget or making plans, how do you figure out pricing? How do you figure out what it costs to transport a car?
Yeah. Just based on the data reports that I track every week and month, I have a pretty good idea. Right now, we're spending on average about $500 per unit. And granted, we're not going to ship from the same locations as everyone else, but we've got 25 dealerships across the country, all kinds of different routes from builders. So that really culminates almost the entire United States. We'll ship from every corner almost. And then you compare that against mileage. Mileage is another thing. That's how you're going to come up with your cents per mile, your cost per mile. And then, how many units you move that month. That'll give you how much you're spending on each unit averagely. So I think since I've started, the company against our shipping budget has been able to save $1.3 million annually per year. So that's pretty good progress. Yeah, that's real money. Shipping costs, as everyone else can understand that has to deal with it, is usually the biggest expenditure to a company. I know it's ours outside of actually buying the vehicles, but we spend a lot of money in shipping. So any chance you can get to reduce those costs based on data, you should definitely be doing so. Yeah.
I hope we present it in a way, and we document it, present it in a way that it helps somebody doing some research trying to figure out how to transport cars. So I have one last question for you. As I was getting ready to talk to you today, I was able to read a little bit about your leadership philosophy and some of your core values that you've developed over time. I'd love for you to share some of those that I think would be helpful to some of us who are still, growing and learning as leaders and as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still growing and learning. There's always something you can be improving on. What I used to not be good at, I'm good at now. I think being flexible, having the ability to change, and also adapting. And adapting can be so vast as far as adapting to your type of coworkers or employees underneath you, adapting to your environment, the needs of others. It's a huge thing. And then, using that to mold whatever it is that you're trying to transform. And also, I think as we move forward through this era, communication is becoming a huge thing and always will be. Learning how to communicate with different styles and different manners. I'm still learning how to communicate better. And there's going to be other tools for that. Whether it's through social media or directly or through different channels. Communication is a huge thing. And then also, just not being afraid, I guess, to take the next step, being pliable, not having that fear. I think fear to make change will bog down a lot of people and that's when progress stops. So
yeah, those are excellent core values. I appreciate you sharing those with me. I believe in those core values as well. Yeah. Especially around adapting. Change is inevitable.
Yeah,
it's coming for all of us.
Yeah, sure is.
We can't control that. Yeah, but we can control how we react to change and what we do from there.
Yep.
Thanks, Colby. I think that's it for us today. I loved catching up with you. Thanks for dropping some knowledge on us and sharing some insights from how you built the transport team, how you built the transport department, how you run it, about tech and everything else. So I appreciate you sharing those things openly with us today.
Yeah, no, thanks for the ability for letting me give a shout out. Sorry for the poor quality of camera footage on my end, but just going to have to deal with it.
It's great. We'll get better over time. I think what's important is the content that we deliver. I'm learning as well. Hopefully, over time, I think over time, as we record more of these, you can see the improvements, like learnings over time. Things gradually get better eventually. So you can kind of see like everyone has to start somewhere. And
that's right.
I was stuck in this place of trying to perfect things. I was trying to have the perfect studio and have a great microphone and lighting. I have a couple boxes sitting here that are supposed to do this, put a rug and soundproof this room. But I realized that if I focused on doing that, I wouldn't get started for a while.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get started and just gradually improve over time. So like getting it done was better than perfect. What's that
That's right.
phrase?
That's right.
Is that right? Okay.
I like that. That's right.
All right. So with that, we'll sign off. If any of you would like to get a hold of us, or connect, if you want me to connect you with Colby, you can probably find Colby on LinkedIn. You don't need me to connect with Kolby Robinson on LinkedIn, and you can connect with him, learn more from him directly, maybe if you want. But if you want to talk to Super Dispatch, you want to have any questions or feedback or suggestions about Auto Transport Copilot, feel free to send me an email. I am superbek@superdispatch.com. So I'm open to any suggestions, ideas, or conversation with anyone. Thanks again. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. See ya. Bye.